Those that have the Vilna edition tonight, that's page 65. Lama Gimel Amud Aleph. If you sold the ganav sold the cow or the sheep which he stole except for 1% of it, so 91% of it. Oh, or there was a partnership in this. In other words, he stole his partner's sheep, and he really had an ownership stake in it, right? Or he shechted it, but it became an avela as he was shechting it. Hanoicher, he shot it, or ran it through in the old days. Makir, he ripped out its trachea and esophagus. All those cases are not. I told your brother to tell you. He didn't tell you, right? I'm sorry. Stick around for Yerushalmi. How'd you get here? Was she waiting for you? No, you drove. Well, I'm sorry, but tonight he slaughtered. So if a guy slaughtered the animal, which was intended to, he stole an animal, and then Tashlumi Kefil, and Tashlumi Arba Chamish would be based on Shrita, but he muffed up the Shrita, right? Became an Avela, or he ripped out he shot it, or he ripped out the Simonim, the trachea and esophagus. So you don't get Arba Chamish then. Mishalim Tashlumi Kefil, Venim Mishalim Tashlumi Arba Chamisha. There's double payments, not quadruple and double payments. Gana Barshusa Bailim. What if you stole in the area owned by the owners? In other words, in his backyard. So that's not really stealing because you didn't take it outside of his backyard. But then you took it out of their rishus to slaughter it or to sell it. So then de facto that's stealing, right? At that point you actually stole it, right? Or vice versa, you stole when it was walking down the street, you chopped it, that was your stealing. And then he took it in their backyard, kind of like ironic, and he slaughtered or sold in their backyard. Or of course, he did the whole thing, outside their rishus. That's all liable for Tashlumi Arba Chamisha, because at some point it left their rishus. However, if you did Geneva and Tvicha or Geneva and Mechir b'Shusan, then you're exempt from the Arba Chamisha. Now, and possibly even from Kefil, because you never actually took hold of possession of it. Now, the Pnei Moshe says it's only if you didn't pick it up, because Kagbah is koine even in Rishus Bailim. But it's pretty hard to be Makbiyah an ox. So therefore, Hagbah will really only work properly by a sheep. Okay?
But you could do Mashiach.
Yeah, that's true, but there's no Mashiach in his own Rishus. That's the point. In other words, in his own Rishus, there's no such thing as Mashiach. It has to be Mashiach out of the Rishus. Rabbi Zira boy. Rabbi Zira asks a question like this. Everybody has difficulty with this question, but we're going to learn like Rit Baz. Rabbi Zira asks a question like this. Mocho chetzion. Mao. You sold half. Now, what's the difference between this and selling 99% of the animal, which it said in the Mishnah? Because there, the way the Rit Baz wants to learn, in the Mishnah, if you sold 99% of the animal, left 1%, that 1% might be anywhere in the animal. Breira issue, right? You don't know which part of the animal you retain to yourself. So there's no definite sale. And a kinyan she'ena mevura in halach is not considered to be a valid kinyan. You can't sell 99% of something and leave 1% of yourself if that 1% is not clarified. Okay? However, in a case where, it's possible to construct it, it will work, but that's not the issue here. The point is when you sold half of it, according to Rit Baz, you said specifically certain limbs you're selling to him, to the other person. It wasn't just a free-floating percentage. So therefore, if you sold part of it, so we prorate the Arba Chamisha based on your having sold half of the animal, right? We prorate the extra payments based on your having sold that half. For that half is their extra payment. So it says in one Nishmina, turn the page, Nishmina Menadot, not you. Nishmina Menadot, start out from here. Machra, if you sold an animal, Chutz Miyada, except for its hand, front foreleg, Chutz Miyagla, except for its hind leg, Chutz Mikarna, except for its horn, chutz migizaso, except for its shearings. So then, mishalei tashlumei arba v'chamisha. Now the Shaita so changes this, and I think is correct. The Ritba seems to change as well. Eino mishalei tashlumei arba v'chamisha. In other words, even if it's specified what you're retaining for yourself and what you're selling, there's no prorated tashlumei arba v'chamisha. There's no payment whatsoever. All you pay is the classic kefil, not more than that. Okay, so you have to throw in the word eino mishalei tashlumei arba v'chamisha, and that fits with the next Gemara very well, as we will see momentarily. Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Shimon Omer, chutz mikarna, he argues, basically. He says, if you sell an animal except for its horn, you pay, he doesn't argue. Rabbi Lezer says, if you sell an animal chutz except for its horn, you pay tashlumei kefel, because you excluded something from the sale. However, chutz mikizo said, if you sell an animal besides its shearings, the shearings are considered separate. Why? Because horns are not made to come off the animal until you kill it, right? Shearings are made to come off an animal even before you kill it, right? So there, if you sell an animal, besides its shearings, you're still liable to arba chamisha, because that's really selling the essential animal in its entirety. The shearings are considered to be a separate entity, right? Rebbe says, chutz min davar sheneshama tluya bo. If you sell an animal and leave out of the sale something where the neshama, which is not a life-supporting mechanism of the animal, then, and here the Pnei Moshe changed it, eino mishayin tashlum arba chamisha. You don't pay arba chamisha because you didn't sell the main part of the animal. However, chutz midavar she'eino neshama tluya bo, if you sell the animal and exclude something which the neshama is not contingent on, let's say you exclude a horn, or you exclude a leg, or something like that, then, again, changing gears like Pnei Moshe does, mishayin tashlum arba chamisha. So all this is the proof, and the coup de grace, the ultimate proof, is the final statement of Rebbe. Rebbe Taka holds, if you sell specific parts of the animal, you do pay tashlum arba chamisha. So it's only in our Mishnah where you said you retained 1%, you didn't define which 1%. You retained that, in that case, there is no tashlum arba chamisha. But in a case where you sold specific parts, which are neshamas tluyabo, which contain vital organs of the animal, in that case you pay, and there it's not prorated either, because since you sold vital organs, it's like you sold the entire animal, and you pay the full arba v'chamisha. Okay? The additional amount you pay, the 4 to 3 or 4, 2 or 3 more times above the double payment for Geneva. Right, exactly. Above the kefil. Above the kefil.
Didn't discuss any part of the ratio about stealing about
the safe in the Mishnah. Oh, the ratio? No, didn't discuss it all.
Doesn't somewhere in the back of my mind does the Bali discuss in this Mishnah about Yeir, about the Baal Hashor making Yeirish, not giving up.
I honestly don't remember.
But I recall that concept.
Yeah. If this was Navi, I'd ask Yossi what it says, but I'm not sure I can hold responsible for Merubah. You ever learn Merubah?
I know that the Baal making does Yeirish, giving up hope of ever getting it back.
Yeah, I don't remember what else. Of course, it's mentioned. Yeah, it's all in this parak. Yes, Yerush is all in Merubah in the Bavli. Of course. No, we didn't have. Not in Yerushalmi at all.
I thought it was around this type of piece.
It is in Merubah. You're definitely correct. Those are the sigus of Yerush and Shiur. I don't remember if it pertains specifically to this Mishnah, but they are definitely in Merubah in the Bavli. Absolutely. Okay. If you're pulling the animal out of the reshus of its master, you were stealing it. Umeis reshus bailim, and it died while it's still in the reshus of the bailim potter, because you never completed your gneva, you bumbled it. Hikpio, if you lifted up the animal, or shotzil chutz reshus bailim, you removed it outside of the reshus of the owner, umeis, and then it died, chayev, then you're liable, because obviously, kefil, not arba chamisha, but you stole it successfully. Nasl b'chayres b'no, now if you gave this animal to a kohen as pidyon haben, in other words, you owed money to a kohen for pidyon haben, you were broke, so you stole the money, you stole a cow, and you gave it as pidyon haben, or to redeem your firstborn, or l'ba'al chova, somebody to whom you owed money, Or you gave it, for that matter, to Shomer Chiyam, to a watchman, either to watch it for free, to show somebody who borrowed from you, or somebody who was a paid watchman, or to a renter. And you were pulling it, and you gave it to them in the backyard. I mean, you invited them to the guy's backyard and said, "This is my backyard. Don't you like this backyard? And here's my cow." So he gave it to one of these guys, to the cow, and he thought it was yours, right? Umeis b'rshus bailim potter. And if it dies in rshus bailim, your potter still, again, as before. He bil sheotzio chutz b'rshus bailim umeis, and it died there. Chayav. So then the guy who it's not clear who's chayav, but somebody's chayav to pay if you did meshicha. So the pashtus is that the guy who presented it would be chayav, but I don't remember if that's the case, because l'maisa I think we basking geneva b'shogeg is geneva, so maybe chayav is going on the individual who pulled it out. I don't remember. Amrei Mother said, "Man demarli b'ha milsa." Anybody who tells me the following thing, on a nasi ban risa, I'm going to carry his clothing after him to the bathhouse. Babe Bani is a bathhouse. Ban Raisa are the bathhouse clothing. Mao Potter. When it says Meis B'Shus Bailim Potter, what's Potter mean? Niftar Michovo or Niftar Migneva? Does it mean that if I gave this guy this cow for Pidyon Aben and he took it, that even though the cow died, that counts because he thought he was getting paid and he thought he got the cow? Or does it mean that he's Potter from paying back because the Gneva died in the reshus of the owner, right? In other words, it never actually was stolen, so therefore you don't have to pay back. So it's an interesting issue. I'm not sure exactly what the ethical component of this is, but theoretically we want to there's a possibility of saying, since the Kohen got a cow which he accepted in lieu of payment, then the cow died, so the Kohen doesn't know any better. What he doesn't know doesn't hurt him, and you were yotze your obligation. The same thing with the cow, if it died by the Baal Chov. The Baal Chov got it in lieu of payment, so maybe that works. It's kind of strange, but that's what the Gemara seems to indicate.
What about, the Gemara always says about being with Kaddish, a woman with something that's stolen?
Well, that won't work, because there for sure, it doesn't have, the woman besides agreeing to accept it has to actually receive a Shavah Pruta. So there it's not going to work. Okay? Okay, you don't have to feel free to, you don't have to feel you have to stay. We don't want you to be a captive audience. But if you come tonight, then every night between 9:15 and 10:15 usually we go. One is not allowed to grow sheep in Eretz Yisrael. Why? Because they roam and they steal. One is allowed to grow sheep in Syria because most of the fields are goyim, and you also can grow in deserts because the fields, the pastures, all hefker, even in Eretz Yisrael. You can't grow roosters in Yerushalayim or birds. They're catching because they bring all sorts of stuff in their mouths, which is like worms and stuff like that, and parts of rodents, and maybe it's going to come to kachim and make the kachim tummy. The low crime Eretz in general, crime Eretz should not raise chickens. They are taros because they'll make the taros tummy if the birds bring stuff from the from the environment. Jews should not grow pigs anywhere. Person should not raise a dog and can shells unless it was on a chain. Any person is shoving one also cannot set traps for doves unless you're 30 ris away from a community which is a little bit more than 4 mil. I think there's 7 ris per mil, so it's a little bit more than 4 kilometers. Because otherwise they're afraid you're going to catch somebody else's domesticated birds. Amrei Bro said, could go my here. Where's an area district which is a midbar in Eretz Yisrael where you can grow sheep? He says Mahir. I don't know where Mahir is, but it's some sort of district. It's quite large, and there's enough room room for sheep to pasture and graze without causing anybody any collateral damage. Tani, we learned the Brayse Megali Tani Golan Yerushalmi. One cannot grow birds in Yerushalmi. They are kachim because of the kachim. They're going to make it tar. Flokani Beretz Yisrael Minei Taros. Also Kohanim all very so because of Taros. So the Shayat Yisrael changes the next word to V'yehei Ap Yerushalayim Kain. Why did you draw a distinction? Say Yerushalayim also because of Taros. What's the difference? If Taros is an issue, Taros should also be an issue in Yerushalayim. Why mention Yerushalayim Kachim and Taros and the rest of Eretz Yisrael? So you can mention Taros in Yerushalayim as well. Or Yeva Kakai Damara Bisham Levi. So the Gemara says, or perhaps, the reason why, which is actually your language of an answer, or perhaps, meaning perhaps we can propose, excuse me, the reason Taros not mentioned is Kai Damara Bisham Levi, like Rabbi Shimon Levi says, Yerushalayim Habunuya Kir Shechubra Lo Yachta. Yerushalayim is built like a city which is all connected, and we darshan that Ir Shemechaberes Yisrael Zelazeh. Am Yisrael, Yerushalayim makes all Jews connected to each other, and the way it makes all Jews connected to each other is this is actually something which we've learned elsewhere in the Yerushalmi, that at the time of Aliyah L'Regel, all Amoratim were assumed to be tar, and everything it brought was assumed to be tar. After the Regel, things reverted, and we assume that what Amoratim had was tummy. But during Aliyah L'Regel, it's considered to be tar. So therefore, we don't want to mention in conjunction with Yerushalayim aspersions on Tahara. So therefore, it's the Tahara which has to do with other things other than Kachim. Because next thing you know, people are going to be makbid on Taharos, even though it means to exclude the Amoratim from the totality of Am Yisrael. So therefore, we'd rather mention the issue of Kachim, which obviously everybody knows that you have to stay away from unless you're a Kohen and well trained in that matter. Okay? Says the Gemara Ksiv, it says Tmeim Heim Lachem. It says by trait animals. This is a drasha, which I don't remember from the Bavli at all, and I think it's just an asmachta, but I'm not sure. It says Tmeim Heim Lachem. It says that the animals which are treif are Tamei Lachem. Matam Lomer Utmeim Lachem, but there's an extra vav in the pasuk on the word Tmeim. Or maybe it says twice Tmeim Lachem. It says once Tmeim Lachem and once it says Utmeim Lachem. You also familiar with that? In Parshas Tzav or Shmini? Which one is it which has the treifus? Shmini. Does it say Tmeim Lachem and Utmeim Lachem? Does it say both? Yeah, okay, so then it's two separate psukim. So it says Tmeim Lachem, and elsewhere it says, in the same part it says Utmeim Lachem. El Echad Yisra Achila ve'Echad Yisra Noya. One teaches us the Yisra of eating, and the other a Chiddush. Now to derive benefit. Now the benefit is left after you're allowed to have a pigskin wallet or pigskin foot.
Don't eat the football.
I wasn't even thinking of pigskin football. Zicher Aser. All right. They actually still make them out of pigskins? That's what they make out?
No, it's still called a pigskin.
They're not plastic? Okay. So, so it's telling us that, but Isra no, it means you're not allowed to do schayla. You're not allowed to make your living out of pigs. Kol davar isur midvarav et yidivreim, anything which is only this is the Rabbana. Mutar lasos b'schayla. You're allowed, let's say, stam yena. Right, if you had Gallo wine. So you can sell Gallo wine for a living, right? Not to Jews, but you can sell it to Goyim. But if it's Yain Nesech, Mamish D'Oraisa, then it's also to make Schleira, and it seems that either from the Strosh or from the Smachta, that's the way we learn it out. Havarei Chamor, that's top of Lamed Al Rav. Says the Gemara, how come, so if that's the case, how can we allowed to trade in donkeys? Right? How can a Jew be a donkey dealer? It says because there it's not grown to eat; it's grown to work. Also limlachto gado. That's okay because it's grown for its work, not for its edibility. You shouldn't raise dog unless it's done on a chain. Anybody grows a bad dog in his house. Oh, because of Omer, the surname it says, Lamas Meire Eyu Chesed. He deprived of his friend from Chesed, meaning if he has a dog, so everybody's going to be afraid to come in his house, the wild dog. He has a bad dog, everybody's going to be afraid to come in his house, and that will deprive him of the capacity to do Chesed unto others. Any person what does not spread nets for pigeons, and we can know Yerochim and Ishuv Shloshim Ris. Says tomorrow, wait a minute. Ula'ala, and let him in Boa Basra says that you have to set a dovecot distant from a city, Chamishim Amo, only 50 amos, much shorter difference than the 7 ris, than the 30 ris, which is much further. L'reos miria Chamishim Amo. In terms of grazing, they graze only around 50 amos from their nest. So therefore, you're safe in setting up another dovecot 50 amos away, because it's rare that they will stir from their dovecot further than that, and therefore they're not going to come and to join your dovecot. They're going to remain around their colony. But occasionally, lifroach, they fly parach safil abas milin. They do range up to 4 mil. So if you set up a net, that's different, because then it's not going to be able to range back, right? It can range in a radius around its nest and dovecot and come back. But if you set a net, then you're going to ruin that pattern. That's not okay. Again, I don't remember this at all from the Bavli, but that's not right, because the end of Maruba I probably wouldn't remember anyway. What? But there's within the 50 amos. Doesn't talk about any, doesn't discuss our Mishnah. But it probably isn't on the end of Maruba, because, this is explicit Mishnah here. Okay, next Mishnah. Now, in Maruba and the Bavli is 20 some odd block. The Yerushalmi was how many? 3 or 4? No, more than that.
Because there was text that was lost.
It's anything is possible. It's unlikely, because it's a pattern throughout the Zakin. And the shortest staccato Yerushalmi.
There's no nachos.
Yeah.
It just stays in a big discussion of railroad on that prior mission.
Yeah. And also there's a tremendous amount of the droshes back and forth in the about Kefil and Arba Chamisha, but there's Yerushalmi. Okay, on to the next parak. This is another exciting parak. I hit you. I punch you out. Bush and Gore are going to do to each other soon. So each one is chayv to the other, chamisha dvorim. 5, each one. The damager is chayv to damaging 5 payments. Benezek, damage, we're going to explain all these things. Tsar, and pain. Ripui, healing. Shevis, unemployment. Boshus, embarrassment. Benezek, Ketzad, how does nezek work? If you blind somebody, you chop off his hand. She was to break his leg in the old days. That was not a correctable injury. We look at this guy who was damaged as if he's a slave sold on the block. Kama Yafa, how much was he worth beforehand? Kama Yafa, and how much would he be worth now? And the difference is nezek. Okay, that's the difference. The difference is nezek. Tsar, what's the pain for pain? Kvoye b'shpud. If you burn somebody with a skewer, or with masmer, or with a nail, even if you burn him on his fingernail, so it doesn't make a bruise, and so there's no permanent damage, you got to pay for the pain by itself. We reckon how much a person like this would rightfully want to be paid, to get such anguish, and that's the payment which we make. Okay, now we're going to go into some detail. Tani, you damage his friend, Chamisha, in a manner which incurs all 5 payments. Chamisha gives all 5 payments. If he only incurs Arba, Arba gives him only 4 payments. Shlosha, 3 payments. Shlosha gives him 3 payments. Shnaim, 2 payments. Shnaim. Echad, 1 payment. Echad, he gives him only 1, and now we're going to explain. Vechi, how does this work? Hikra Yada, I have to tell you that, like, Lieberman makes a big timus because it says Heichi and not Heichidami, and even Heichidami is not in the rest of Yerushalmi, so that's the Haskalah Shazachin, but we're not going to get into that right now. Vechi, how does it work? Hikra Yada, you hit him on his hand. Vikata, and it got chopped off. Oh, that's our Mishnah. Notice in Chamisha, there are all 5 payments. Nezek, damage, tsar, pain, ripui, healing, sheves, unemployment, boshes, and embarrassment. He called Yoda Yinrazan Vitzavas, and it gets a scar, but it doesn't actually fall off. So in that case, how many payments do you have? Only 4. There's no nezek, right? Because his hand healed. No sin l'arba. Give him 4 payments. Tsar, pain, ripui, healing, sheves, unemployment, boshes, embarrassment. He called Rosh, he hit a guy in his head with tzavas, and he gets a scar. So then there's no sheves, because he can work. His hand's not damaged. Hand's damaged, you can't work. Head's damaged. Who needs their head to work? Okay? So you certainly don't need a head to be the president of the United States, right? So no sin lo. So then you give him 3 payments. Tsar, for pain, ripui, healing, and this says sheves, but it's supposed to be boshes. Pnei Moshe changed it. It's obvious. B'mokum she'ein nir. Now, if you do it in a place where you can't be seen, now, Rabbi says, interesting. Machlokes Rambam Ravid, Talmud Yerushalmi. Some of you have it. The Bible Gemara brings it down. And I never thought about this before. How does boshes work? How do you pay a person for boshes? The 2 possible ways of looking at it, and some machlokes I'll return him how to look at it. Some learn boshes is the guy's going to walk around for the rest of his life with a scar or with a chopped off hand. It's degrading. That's the boshes you pay. But the other way of looking at boshes, which is more likely actually, is where the incident took place. In front of how many people, how public the incident was. Okay? That's what you always thought? I always thought it was the first one.
It's the embarrassment of it happening.
Okay, so basically you can have 2 pshatim in Makom Shein Onira. One is in Makom Shein where the wound cannot be seen. In which case that's like the long-term embarrassment, because some of the blood then won't be a problem. Or Makom Shein Onira means where nobody sees it taking place. Okay? So it be either or, then Boshes drops off. No sin lo tsar, shnaim, then only 2 payments. Tsar, pain, and ripui. Betumus shebiyodo. If you hit a guy with a newspaper in your hand, a rolled up newspaper, so tumus means literally a pack of shtoros, a pack of documents. So there's only 1 payment. What's that? No sin lo echad, Boshes, embarrassment. Seems to indicate that Boshes is because it's done in a public fashion, right? So
It's a well-written.
Rabbi Yirmiyah boy. Rabbi Yirmiyah asks like this. Kata yoda. You chop off a guy's hand. The chazer, and then you keep chopping like salami. Chop here, and chop here, chop here, chop here. Kata yoda, chazer v'kata yoda mimalon. Interesting torture. Ma'ushitein lo tsar sheshor rishoyna. Now, do you give it to the tsar based on the first time or each time separately? Now, why is this? Why we ask this? Because each incident blends into the other, right? Each pain blends into the other, right? If you gauge each incident of pain separately, then it'd be a lot more to pay. But if you gauge all the pain together, so then the pain tends to blur, right? Once you inflict some pain and continue to inflict pain, so then the pain is not separate incidents. So where they be separate incidents, there'd be much more payment for pain. Since if you take them whatever together, then it's much less of a payment.
Is there a time element? Like you wait till the pain subsides and then you chop them again?
Then I don't think it would be a shiloh. So he means we only give him the tsar of the first moment. She'll show only of Shor Rishona, because all the other pain afterwards just blends into that. Or we mount it's like a knas. And for each time he chops him, we give him more tsar. So the Gemara doesn't answer that one. Okay? Ksiv. Okay, now the Bavli has a whole long philosophical and homiletical, exegetical discussion of how we know Ayin Tachas Ayin is not literal, right? One of the basic things in Achoido, the spirit. Yerushalmi just patters this up in a few lines. Ksiv it says, Ayin Tachas Ayin, eye for an eye. Shein Tachas Shein, tooth for a tooth. Umacham Acher it says, elsewhere it also says, that's in Shmois, and Dvarim El says, by Neit Zomim. Lo Sachos Einecha, do not have any kindliness. It says there also, Ayin Tachas Ayin, Shein Tachas Shein. Why do we need 2 psukim? Echot Shoy V'echot, 2 places. Echot Shoy V'echot Meizid. One that he paid when he did it b'shogeg, and the other he paid it in Mazid. Yomar shogeg val Yomar Mazid. So why need both? If you pay by shogeg, kal v'chomer you pay Mazid. Now the Bavli would have answered, I think, well, you don't know shogeg unless you know Mazid. Because the first time it's written, it would imply Mazid. The second time it's written, it would imply also shogeg, right? Right. So, but the Yerushalmi it gives a version of that, but not quite the same way. The Yerushalmi is somewhat more convoluted. Says Mashi'ilu nemar shogeg v'lo nemar Mazid. Were it to have just said shogeg, the Yerushalmi assumes it could have just said shogeg and not Mazid. I guess 8 zomim, the Yerushalmi says 8 zomim by definition Mazid. Because an 8 zomim obviously is intentionally committing this, right? So I would say shogeg yishali mamon. Now I have to explain to you something. Another haskalah shazach here. The Escorial manuscript has much more Gemara here, which I'm about to read to you. And the reason why, as Lieberman points out, there was a tos hadomos here. Tos hadomos is a term which comes from the world of scholarship, and it's a mistake which comes because when Sofrim copy, they look up, copy a line, then they write it down, right? Then they look up to the last word, and then they copy the next from there. And sometimes the last word they looked at appears a couple lines later, and therefore they skip a couple of lines. So here too, the word mammon was here twice, and a couple in 2 lines. And the Sofer skipped the whole line from play mammon to mammon. Okay, whole couple of lines. So this is the way to read it. Okay, shil nemar shogeg. Let's start from here again. Shil nemar shogeg, v'lo nemar Mazid. Ha'isiim, I would say shogeg yishali mammon. Or shogeg pays money. Mazid. Now here it's where I'm throwing in stuff. Yikates yada. I would say in shogeg ayin tachas ayin is money. In Mazid, I would say, cut off the guy's hand, chop off the guy's hand. Have a tzorech hushiyomar Mazid. So that's say even by Mazid it's dafka money. Oh, is still not at all in the Gemara. Oilu nemar Mazid v'lo nemar shogeg, where they've only mentioned Mazid, which again by 8 zomim, and not shogeg. I would say Mazid mishalim mamon, that a Mazid pays money, right? However, shogeg, I would say, back inside the Gemara, lo yishalim klum, should not pay anything. So that's to tell me both Mazid and shogeg, they pay.
It says ayin tach sayin, so we don't.
Right. So talking. Well, good point. Right. The thing is, Yerushalmi is all very abundant because in the Gemara, in the Chumash itself, it says ayin and shein. Right. Okay, we're coming there. Have it tzarech l'mar shoy, tzarech l'mar Mazid. Now, so how come tak it's not money, right? How come tak it's not ayin? Literally, it's money. So here the Yerushalmi takes care of this. Shima yasuma, the sima eseno. If the guy who was testifying by Neid Zomim, or was damaging in a case of damage, right? If he himself was blind, the sima eseno blinded somebody else's eye. Or kitea, the guy was testifying or was damaging himself, was amputee. And he amputated the other guy's hand. Vasis lo kasher zomam slochim. How do you feel either kasher zomam, right? Ayin tachas ayin shein tachas shein b'kasher zomam, or the ayin tachas ayin shein tachas shein by hitting. So it must be money. So we say that you have to write the ayin tachas ayin and shein tachas shein by both Mazid and shogeg, even though neither of them are literal. In order that you should know that in both cases you pay money and don't have to pay, don't give the actual literal punishment. Okay? Obviously, the Yerushalmi had a Messiah. The Yerushalmi knew. And that's probably true about the Bavli as well, though the Bavli takes much longer to prove it, but from logically. But the Messiah is ayin tachas ayin is money, and therefore they were using that in teaching of the psukim. and saying that we need both. Still can tell us that you pay under both circumstances, and there is no greater or lesser punishment. Okay? Tsar. Going to the next payment. Tsar. What's tsar? We mentioned our Mishnah. Kvay b'shput, if you burn a guy with a skewer or masmer with a nail, afilo tziparno, even as nail, mokum shenos a chabura, a place where it does not make a chabura. Now, difference. I did not realize this till this evening. Let's ask Yossi. What's the difference between a chabura and a petza? Very good. I'm impressed. All right, a chabura is a bruise. It's not. It doesn't break through the skin. A petza is actually a wound. It breaks through the skin. I never thought of that before, even though I've learned Chumash many years. In Gemara, it's not like that. Gemara chabura, I think, also means puncture.
Is there something about hitting your hand that basically depends for the ownership?
Of course, yeah, it would have to be petza, not a chabura, sure. No, I don't know if that's true though. I don't know if it draws blood underneath, black or blue, so that's called a chabura. So I know what the halacha is by parents about that. I don't remember. Anyway, so kvaya b'shvuda maser afilo tzipora, even on his fingernail, makom she'eno se chabura, place which doesn't make a bruise. So now we're going to analyze that line of Mishnah. That's the line for the Mishnah. See if it says kviyah tachas kviyah, pay burn per burn. Hechidami, what are we talking about? Im b'shepatzo v'otzi damo. In other words, how do we isolate a case where there's only pain and nothing else? If you punctured him and extracted blood, see petza tachos petza. Ray says petza tachos petza. Now instead of matam ulom, the Shari Teretz Yisrael has instead im b'shasa bo chabura, and if you didn't damage him, just bruised him, contusion I think is the word for it. Isn't that the fancy word for it? Kvar kosov, it says chabura tachas chabura. Right? And Ray says chabura tachas chabura. So what's a case where where there's tsar only, and it's not elishim? You can't say shem kavoya b'shpura kaf yodo v'tzavas. If you burned him on his hand and it got a scar, kaf yodo is his palm, or kaf raglo on his heel v'tzavas, or shitil of sheleg, or you put on him snow, frostbite, or tzinim or other. Or ice, mokum she'eino nira. True that there's no nezek, there's no shevis, there's no boshes, but there is ripui. So that's not a case which is good because they do need to heal a guy, right? So therefore, what's the case which we're dealing with in our Mishnah? A case dafka where you burnt the guy on his fingernail. Because burn on a fingernail, it's just pain. There's nothing else. There's no other damage, would just be pain. Okay? Now, so it says Yerushalmi. Now, before I do this Yerushalmi, let me tell you, it comes out the exact opposite of the Bavli. The Bavli and Yerushalmi have diametrically opposed conclusions here. Okay, so Omdim Kam Odom Yikayetzi B'Zeh Roitza Lito Lios Mitzvah. Where the Rebbe Mishnah said, we reckon how much a person like this would want to take in order to get this tsar. Amr Rebbe Zimmer says, Chami Parnash. We look for a person, we check a person, Varman, we say, Kamat Boila Meitan, how much would you pay us? We're about to hit you really hard. How much would you pay us that we shouldn't hit you? But we have a hand Sarah, so and this pain should not be for you. And whatever he says, that's what we give this guy who underwent the pain. Okay? Now that's the conclusion of the Bavli. But it's only the Havamin of the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi says, wait a minute. Amar Ukva, Kama Adam Rotzli Toli Masisa. Mishnah doesn't say how much a guy would pay to avoid pain, but how much a person would pay to accept pain. So how can you say this is the way to reckon it? So the Bavli fetches out of this question. It says you give a person, this person gets how much he would pay in order to avoid. But the Yerushalmi, because this question changes, Elochame, rather we find a guy, and we say to him, Kamat boy Mesav, how much do you want to receive v'yavach v'ahen Sarah, in order that we can inflict this pain upon you? Umadu Omar Yavinle, and whatever he says, that's what we give him. And that's the exact opposite of the Bavli, because the Bavli says a person, if you come to a person and say, how much do I have to pay in order for you to accept pain? So a person is going to ask an astronomical amount in order to accept pain, right? What a person is going to pay to avoid pain is much less than a person is going to want to be paid to accept pain, right? You might pay $50 to avoid getting slapped in the face. But if somebody asks you how much you want to be paid in order to be slapped in the face, you're not going to do it for less than 100, right? Makes sense, right? So the Bavli says you can't make and that's a slap in the face. Imagine getting a burn. So the Bavli says it's got to be how much a person would pay to avoid pain, not how much a person would accept in order to receive pain. But the Yerushalmi says the exact opposite, because Yerushalmi takes the Lashon of the Mishnah as being much more etched in stone, and therefore Yerushalmi Taka learns how much a person would want to be paid in order to accept upon himself the pain.
Well, it's the Lashon of the Mishnah.
Okay, so I'm saying, so the Bavli uses Svara to get out of that. The Yerushalmi, it's kind of like the difference between Rashi and Tosfos. Rashi will give Pashup Shot, even though Svara is not so good, and Tosfos will go after Svara, even though the Pshat is not so good. So to the Yerushalmi follows Pashup Shot in the Mishnah, even though in Svara it's not so good, and the Bavli goes after Svara, even though the Pshat is not so good. Okay? The Bavli has many more tools to deal with Mishnah, Mechsura, other things which we don't find, it seems, in the Yerushalmi, which takes Mishnah much more straight up. Okay? Says the Gemara, Tani ben Azai Omer, this is, to the best of my recollection, is not in the Bavli, but is a Tosefta. Ben Azai says, Noisim nakoi mozon. We pay for, I don't know exactly the translate nakoi, but it means subsidize his food. Mao nakoi mozon, what is food subsidies? Because before this guy got hurt, he could eat legumes and vegetables. He was a hearty soul. He could eat that roughage. Now, he doesn't have the capacity to eat anymore. He can only eat eggs and chickens, which is much more expensive. By them, chicken was more expensive than meat. So, yeah, well, I don't know exactly why, but it was. So therefore, you have to pay the fact that he can only eat better foods now. You, the damager, caused that. Okay? Madu Omar, what he says, Yavin Lay. Amr Yosef Bar Yaakov said a fascinating thing. Again, it's the best of my recollection on the Bavli. Ahain Romai, the Roman soldiers, Kad Mivish, when they fall ill or maybe when they're wounded, Lo Nafik Lakrava, they don't see on the bottom in the square manuscript, Yoimin Tachas Yoimin, meaning the way Lieberman explains it, I think it's right, it means when a soldier's sick, he eats less rations. He can't eat more. But they give him in the Roman army the same rations when he's sick. And they don't let him go back to battle until he makes up all of the rations which he missed. In other words, he's not fully healed until any calories and any nutrition which he missed while he's sick, he makes up after he recovers. And then they throw him back into battle again. So we see that the person eats differently on different patterns when he's sick, and it takes a while to get back to regular, normal eating patterns. Okay? Halacha base. Ripui. What's payment for ripui? Hiko, if you hit a guy, you have to heal him. Obotzmachav, if he gets infections. If it's because of the wound, you're liable. If the wound they came not because of the wound, Potter, I've seen your example. If the wound got healed and then it broke down again. Chayes of Nisra got healed and then it broke down again. Chayil Raposo. You have to continue to heal him. Chayes called Tzorko, if he comes fully healed, ain't a Chayil Raposo, not Chayil to heal him anymore. Well, even if it breaks down again, we say, once the doctor said, well, was fully healed, even if then later on it's a problem again, so then we believe the doctor. All right. Now, the Gemara here is very brief, but nobody understood Pshat until I came along in this Gemara. I don't understand. Everybody, even Lieberman, I think, in my opinion, totally up the wrong tree. But one thing I saw in Lieberman is very useful. But Lamaisa, again, what I'm going to say is my Pshat in the following Gemara. You don't like it, so that's my fault. You can both blame only me. Rabbi Yirmiyah made the following statement. That's how we learn Yerushalmi. Rabbi Yirmiyah made the following statement. All about smachim svivos hamaka. What if the infections came around the wound, but not where the wound was specifically? V'nistera, and then the wound broke open. Machmas hamaka, it should be who? The Lieberman brings it down. A Girsif, one of the manuscripts, not an Escorio, one of the other manuscripts. Machmas hamaka. It's because of the makkah. In other words, don't think it has to be specifically on the wound. But even if it's around the wound, and then the wound opens up, that's because of the wound. He's stating a medical fact. Now, he's saying this medical fact, misvara. Right? He's saying it's a logical thing. That's critical, okay? Min ma'atichsiv v'rapoy rapeh. Now the Gemara goes off in a tangent. It says, rapoy rapeh. What does this teach us? The beans, you better listen to the doctor. Shim Avra Devaro, if you transgress the words of the doctor, the Skoria manuscript throws in the word Chayev. Who's Chayev? Who's Chayev? The patient. If the patient didn't listen to the doctor, so the patient is liable. It's not the mazik's fault. Because the Rapoy Rapeh means you got to listen to what the doctor tells you to do, otherwise you're up the creek. There are other pshatim in that line here. I think that's the best pshat. But there are there's another pshat here which says something else. I forget exactly what. The Mecha Maim says it's going on the doctor himself. If the doctor himself. Not this line, sorry, the next line. Tanichor, we learned, not to scratch that, it comes later on. Tanichor, this is all basically the same way. Now, Tanichor learned another brisa. V'rapoy rapeh, shim ola gargunti I think is gangrene, so a similar word. So if it gets an infection, chayaposi, you have to continue to heal it. In other words, don't say it's just the mark itself, it's anything which comes as a result of the mark, which is parallel to our Mishnah. Tanya Rabbi Yossi had another brisa. Rabbi Yossi said, all about smachim svivos hamaka. That's the same thing as Rabbi Yirmiyah. That's a shot. And questions what's the difference between him and Rabbi Yirmiyah? I'll explain in a minute what I think the difference is. But it says all about smachim machas hamaka, svivos hamaka. If there became wounds or infections around the makkah. Even though Nister, the way I'm going to read the sentence, it's not the way most people read it, but I think this is the right way to read it. Even though, as Rabbi Yirmiyah had said, when the makkah opens up again, you have to heal him again. You don't have to pay unemployment the second time. It's an interesting halacha. In other words, as it keeps on breaking down over and over and over again, you have to pay for healing over and over again. But unemployment only once. Only for the first episode. Not for the, not for the recurrence, right? Relapse, not for the relapse. So that's where Rabbi Shimon Lakish comes to explain. That's the brisa. Rabbi Shimon Lakish explains it. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, it says ben Lakish in the Skorio manuscript. It's obviously Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish Omer, Chidush Parsha Zos. It's a special Chidush, Sheitin lo Sheves v'ripui, that you have to give Sheves v'ripui. But look at the way it's structured. Rak Shifto Yitein. What do we have? Word there? Which word there is critical for in this context? Rak is a mute. Rak Shifto Yitein. Shifto only wrote. Rapoy Rapeh. What's critical there? Double language. It means a ribui. So on Sheves, there's a rak, a mute. On ripui, there's a ribui, double. So That's why it's because of Shabbos only once. I guess likely the time of the cross because Shabbos can lead to all sorts of abuses. You have to pay unlimited unemployment costs, right? Then who knows how long the guy's going to feign illness? A doctor can let you do whatever the doctor says. You can tell if the wound is broken or not broken out. So that's how I touch the Gemara. So it sounds good, right? That's all. Nobody touched it up that way before I came along. I mean, maybe somebody did, but I didn't see it written. The Meich HaMayim wants to shtup in here one of the Bavlis. The Bavli says, I'm not sure exactly how he wants to do it. He wants to say in Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, that there's a Bavli which says that eating sweets is bad for gangrene. It's bad for infection. If you eat sweets, your wound is going to get infected. So now he wants to say, if a doctor didn't tell the patient not to eat sweets, he's liable for ripui. The doctor has to pay the ripui, but not the Shabbos. Because the doctor then is a mazik in that he has to pay the bill out of his pocket. It's kind of like malpractice, but unemployment he doesn't have to pay. I don't know how it fits into the language, so it doesn't fit into language very well, but that's how he wants to interpret it. Okay, again, as I said, I think my pshat is the best one. I'm not no good with over either. Shabbos, unemployment. So we look at him as if he's a watchman of squashes. Because he already paid for the guy's hand and the guy's foot. Now this is an important point. You don't pay, and the Gemara is actually, I don't really have to make it because the Gemara is going to make it, but we give him unemployment for the lowest possible profession, not for what he was before the wound. And the Gemara is going to explain why. Okay? Even before he was a concert pianist. We don't give him unemployment as a concert pianist. We give him unemployment as a squash watchman. Right? So, why? Because the nezek already was payment for his loss of capacity to be a concert pianist. Now we're only paying for as a squash watchman that he was unemployed. Okay? Udmei raglo. He already gave him whatever his hand or his foot was worth. It's based on the embarrasser and the embarrassee. Now, Hamavaiser, or if you have walking stark naked down the street, so he's nutso, right? But you embarrass him, you're still liable. Less, but you're liable. Hamavaiser is Hasuma. Somebody embarrasses a blind person, you're liable. Less, but you're liable. Hamavaiser say Yoshin, you embarrass a sleeping person, you're chayev. All these cases are chayev. The Yoshin should be, however, somebody sleeping is embarrassing somebody else, potter. Because there's no busha involved in that. Because everybody knows that a sleeping person is not liable and they're not thinking about what they're doing. So their embarrassment is not embarrassment. Also, one of our favorite cases permuted here, but it's not in the Yerushalmi, it's not in the Mishnayos and the Bavli. It's only in the Mishnayos and the Yerushalmi. Nothing in a gag if a guy falls off the roof, vihisik, and he damages, ubiesh, and he embarrasses, and I guess he fell onto that woman in Yavamas, so chayiv ala nezek, he's liable for damages, but potter ala boishes. He's exempt from boishes. Why? Because it's not boishes. Pasuk says, "V'sholcha yada," a woman whose husband is fighting with another man sends out her hand, v'chzikum evushav, and holds on to one of the men in the other guy in an embarrassing place. So eino chayiv al boishes, not liable al boishes, actually miskaven until sholchas yada. She sends out her hand and does it intentionally. So bosh is done by somebody sleeping or falls off the roof. There's no liability. Okay? Says Marhachad Mar Roima Sokilu Sharma Kishud. Here you say you look at him like a squash watchman. V'achad Mar. Yet elsewhere we said Chaya Osem Mana B'Yom, if you used to make $100 a day, no Sulamana, you give him $100 a day. Selah, if you used to make $1 a day, no Sulamana, you give him $1 a day. So how do we reconcile these two positions? Rabbi Yitzchak said it's very logical. Train shiftininu. There are two types of Shabbos. You call out yoda v'kota. If you cut off his hand, so you hit him on his hand and it got amputated. Ein royin oso kilu eisem mana biyom. We don't look at him as if he could have made $100 a day. So kilu chayich tiger because you look at him as if he's a cripple. And sitting watching squashes. Because you already paid for his hand or for his leg. That's what's permanent damage. However, if you burnt him on his palm, the tzavas, it's going to heal. On his head, tzavas, it's going to heal. Or you freeze him, or cold water, in a place where it's not seen, so there's no boshas, right? So chayav l'rapo, so you have to heal him. But now there's a whole portion missing here, which the Milchamos Ramban has. Hasheves, I'm going to read to you just from my notes here. Hasheves, in an employment act, since it's not a permanent damage, Royano, so in that case we gauge how much he's losing because he can return to his previous profession. So where he loses the previous profession, so then you pay for the lost profession, and then employment you give based on his new capacity, which is much more limited. But it's a temporary loss of work, so then you give him based on whatever work he's lost in the meantime. So if you would have made $100 a day, no still money, but you don't give him $100 a day. Selbiv would have made $1 a day, no still Selbiv only give him $1 a day. Okay? Now, interesting next Gemara, Tani. Also, as far as I know, not in the Bavli, although it says here, reference on the side. Sholcha Yada. Remember, tell you about two men who are fighting, and one of the wives, sends out her hand and holds on to an embarrassing place. Right? But Sholcha Yada, if she on her own initiative says, Eishes so Echad, really. It says the wife of one of them. Sholcha Yada, below Eishes Shliach Basin, what if her husband is a process server for Basin? I don't know if that's the right word. He's a sheriff of the court. Yeah, it's a better word. Sheriff of the court. So she's Mrs. Sheriff. She's not a sheriff herself, but some of his power is delegated to her. Therefore, she has the right to go, and she doesn't have to pay, because she's part of the long arm of the law. She sent out her arm to somewhere embarrassing, but she's part of that long arm of the law. Tani Charulet, another brisa. Tani V'shilchas Yada L'Rabos Shliach Basin, that she has to pay even if she is the wife of a Shliach Basin. Man the Mar V'Sholcha Yada V'Lo Eish Shliach Basin. That's B'Shikor B'Shus, where the sheriff has permission to hit, because Basin subpoenaed this guy and authorized the use of force. Shaman the Mar L'Rabos L'Rabos Shliach Basin, that she's liable to pay. Is b'shikol shlo b'shus, where her husband himself was not authorized to use force. Tiny, now the next line, nobody understands exactly what's going on here. And the lo eshes shnayim, not the wife of two. And of course, that makes no sense. So the Shayat changes because it says eshes o echad, lo eshes shnayim, the wife of one, not the wife of two. So the Shayat changes to lo eshes hasheni, not the wife of the second one. So it means the wife number one, she is responsible for Boshes because she shouldn't have sent out her hand to hold on to this guy in an embarrassing place. But the wife of the second guy, if she then attacks wife number one, she's justified because she is merely saving her husband from this woman who is attacking him. So I think that's the pshat. Eishes ha'echad is chayav b'Boshes, but not the Eishes Hashem who's trying to save her husband by the Boshes caused by the first one. Okay, let's just get to the bottom of the page. This is the severity of a person over an ox. By a man, all 5 payments. Also, if he causes a miscarriage, he pays for the kids. He only pays damage, not any of the other payments. We said the previous broken, he also doesn't pay for miscarriages. If somebody hits his father and mother, so you see even a contusion you're liable. If he didn't make a contusion, or if you damage your friend, even in Yom Kippur, because this Gemara holds there's no killing rabbi in it's only a chiyuv kares. So then you have to make all payments. If you damage an every ivri, you're liable to all payments as well. Except from unemployment is manchu shalom when it's your Eved Ivri. because then his employment is under lien to you, right? So therefore you don't have to pay for it. If you damage somebody else's Eveknani, Chai B'Kula. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Ein Avodim Boshes. There is no shame by slaves. So there was no paying of Boshes to embarrass somebody else's slave. B'Tani, we learned in the B'Tani, we learned in the Brisa. Eidim Shomru, witnesses who said, Midim on our Ploni, we testify on so-and-so, Shestime Shtei Ein of Kachas, he blinded an Evet's two eyes, simultaneously. Or Shehipel Shtei Shein, if he knocked out two teeth Kachas, Eino Nosin Lo Klum. There are Achrishoim and on the Bavli who did not know this Yerushalmi. And they say if you knock out an Evet's two eyes, one of them he goes free, the other one you paid for. You knock out two teeth, one of them he goes free, the other you pay for. Evet Kanani, right? He goes free with her tooth and eye. But the Yerushalmi says if it's both simultaneous, then you don't pay for either of them. They both considered to be part of the freedom process. Zuach Hazu, if you hit one after the other, he goes free for the first one, and also the Meshmiyah pay for the second one. Rabbi Abo Shem Yochanan says, Zoysames teaches us Shami Lavanim Boshes. It sounds from our mission, it says you pay an Evakanani Boshes, right? So it's quite clear that there is, for the Evakanani, you do reckon Boshes. It's obvious from our Mishnah. Which again, it's a machlokes, but that's so the other Mandama holds. Vice versa, you do reckon the Boshes of an Evakanani. Rabbi Lob Shem said, "Amakdishma is a little bit difficult." He said, "Achleinim have that to give in Hashasko a little bit goes a little bit nuts over that." But even we're going to leave that out for now. Rabbi Lob Shem said, "Hamakdish ma'asidei atzmo." If you consecrate all, this is a parallel Gemara to a Bavli. Hamakdish ma'asidei atzmo. If you makdish everything you own, kulo kiddush, everything you own. Not myself, anything you own. I say anything you produce. So in everything you produce is kosher. And how are you going to make a living? You got to go beg. You got to get a green card. Because anything you ever produce on your own is hektish, right? The golden touch, right? Chazer v'tana, you learned another brayso. Makdish ma'asidei avdo. If however you're makdish your slaves ma'asidayim, yotzim and parnas also. First you deduct a little bit for the slave to support himself. Bashar hektish, and the rest is hektish. Why? What's the difference? Hachan amar shar hektish by the Ev, he said, only the remainder is hektish. V'achan by yourself, atamar kulan hektish, to say the entire thing is hektish. So Rabbi Yacha says, the next word, Lieberman changes, I think he's correct, based on some manuscript, to Mitzuyim Yisrael upon his Bnei Chor Yotzim Avodim. If you're makdish your own thing, we're not concerned about you. You'll find a parnasa. Because Am Yisrael supports for free people. But Am Yisrael doesn't support slaves. So if you're makdish yidei avdo, there has to be something left over for the slave to be mefarnes himself. Okay? Locate Rabbi Yochanan. The Rabbi Yochanan not say, so says, well, wait a minute. The Rabbi Yochanan say, hakotei yidei eved chavero. If somebody cuts off his eved's, his eved, the friend, his friend's slave's hands. Rabo noito nisko tzar. The Rabo gets everything. Nisko, Tsaro, Ripuyo, Shifto, Boshto. Falo, what about the Eved? He spires me not stalker. We see your Eved, Avani do get supported from stalker. That's why Avani gets none of the payments and damages. And here you say Avani don't get supported by the stalker. That's why if you're Makti Shadei Avdo, you leave for him a parnos. It's a contradiction. Rabbi Yacha said again, Mitzuyim Yisrael Panes Avani Kitim Yosmin Ashlemim. They don't support whole slaves. They say get a job, but they do support crippled slaves. So therefore, the crippled slave will find something to do. That will find money to pay. Says more. Wait a minute. How can we be so cruel for slaves? For Rabbi Yochanan, Achel Kupa, Rabbi Yochanan used to eat meat. V'niyoyev l'avdei, and he would give it to his the meat to his Eved as well. Shasi Chaim used to drink wine. V'niyoyev l'avdei. The Korea Nafshi used to be a big humanitarian. Not the hello, he said, hello, bebeten oseni oso. The same womb which made me made him. Right? So we see we're supposed to be kind towards somebody. And he said, yes, we're supposed to be kind. Tama mida sadin. But the Gemara which says, looks at the hard reality, that's looking at the letter of the law. From Hocha, Rabbi Yochanan, he had mida sarachim. So if everybody had Midas HaRachmim, but unfortunately not everybody does. Some people are just Republicans.